These dolls aren't hungry, they're addicted. Hello everybody, my name is Tericho and welcome to another horror gaming theory video. You know, I thought I was done with Poppy Playtime for now. I was fairly happy to leave Playtime Co and explore the world of other games, at least until we got chapter 3 anyway. But Mob Games really just said, hold my Poppy Playtime branded beer, I've got more information for you. The latest update from the developers is this 1 minute long teaser trailer, telling us that chapter 3 is coming sometime next year. Seemed a little bit early for a teaser trailer if you ask me. Perhaps this means we will finally get something in the meantime, maybe more in the ARG? Anything? Who knows. But I'm honestly glad that they released this. Though brief, this trailer featuring this ominous looking gas mask actually inspired today's theory. While everyone is clamoring to figure out who the gas mask belongs to and who the big bad is going to be in chapter 3, it's Bron, my money is definitely still on Bron, I've actually been trying to figure out exactly what this mask means. This sent me once again down the rabbit hole that is Poppy Playtime. But with this new perspective and a little bit of out-the-box thinking, I genuinely think I might just have pieced everything together, including a bunch of clues that were right in front of our faces this entire time. Now it's time to blow the lid off of Playtime Co. So this mask got me thinking. In my last video I talked about the idea that if the staff are using gas masks, then that heavily implies there is some sort of hazardous material here. Gas masks are generally used to protect people from dangerous gases or other chemicals that give off fumes, things you don't really want to breathe in. Well, what could these staff be using that is so dangerous? This is a toy factory after all. This is where I remembered a piece of text we got in chapter 2. The note on experiment 814 that we find in Elliot Ludwig's office talks about a rat being submerged in a poppy flower and preservative gel mixture. The scientists were attempting to bring the rat back from the dead, but were unsuccessful, leading them to the conclusion that a bigger test subject was needed. Now most of us saw this in the context of bringing the toys back to life, something we know Playtime Co would eventually succeed in, with Huggy, Mommy Longlegs, Poppy, and so on. But I actually think there was a giant clue here hidden behind the obvious, a clue that we all seem to miss, and that is in the poppy flower and gel mixture. You see, I think the dangerous substance in this factory is made from poppies. In fact, I think the poppy flower is the key to absolutely everything in Playtime Co, even before the scientists started to attempt to bring things back from the dead. After all, this unsuccessful attempt with the rat is experiment 814, meaning that the company had been performing many experiments before this one, and I think there was one giant experiment that we all missed. I've already explored the poppy symbolism in my previous videos, and that is brought up in this note. But what is left to our imagination is why exactly Playtime Co were using poppies in the first place. Well, I think we already have an explanation for this. The poppy flower has been used for hundreds of years to create opium. Now, disclaimer, this segment is purely educational and I am not advocating for the use of any substances. There, now the YouTube police has been satisfied, let's get on with the theory. Opium has historically been used for its pain relief properties. Fun fact, this is where the term milk of the poppy comes from in Game of Thrones, since it's the milky-like substance from the seed pods that produces it. But like most substances, there are those that have used them recreationally. Opium used to be very popular in a fair few countries due to it giving the feeling of euphoria and relaxation. There were many ways people chose to consume it, but it was quite often smoked. So since we know that Playtime Co were using poppy flowers in their experiments, it's entirely likely that they were fully aware of this link. So why is this important? I believe that the dangerous chemical in Playtime Co was based on the poppy flower. Think back to chapter 1 and the introduction of Poppy. We learn that Poppy's hair smells like a poppy flower.
Her hair is sturdy and won't come out when you brush it, and smells just like a poppy flower.
Now this didn't seem all that abnormal. After all, we have toys today that are scented. It's a gimmick, sure, but not an unusual one. Except, knowing that poppies can be used to create a powerful drug opens up a much darker explanation for this feature. What if Playtime Co were infusing the hair of the poppy dolls they were selling with a poppy chemical? This chemical, which was red like the flower, stained her hair a bright red. Well, why would they be doing this? This is where things take a dark turn. Playtime Co were very secretly making children addicted to their dolls. Think about it, parents would buy the poppy dolls for their children, the children would be subtly affected by the poppy chemical, making them happy. After all, this was what Elliot Ludwig stated he wanted to do, bring smiles to children's faces. Well, this could absolutely explain why Playtime Co grew so successful in the first place. Children became mildly euphoric and relaxed around their Poppy doll. Parents were happy, children seemed happy, and Playtime Co would sell more dolls as parents would tell their friends and family how much their children loved their new Poppy doll. Not only would this make the Poppy doll a massive success, but it would also have a secondary function. The children would become addicted to the Poppy chemical. After all, opium is very addictive, one of the reasons why it was banned in many countries. So not only would Playtime Co sell a massive amount of Poppy dolls, but soon the children would become dependent on the substance, which would likely fade from the doll over time, meaning the parents would have to buy Candy Cat, then Boogie Bot, and so on, never truly knowing why these toys made their children so happy. This would absolutely explain the gas mask. If this Poppy chemical was given off through Poppy's hair, then that means it was being breathed in, which would mean that when they were creating these dolls, they would have to wear gas masks. Otherwise, the staff would suffer the effects of this chemical too. It's an evil but genius scheme, and would absolutely set the stage for the much darker experiments that Playtime Co would begin later. But if this theory is true, then it actually starts to explain a lot of random things we can find in the game. These giant pipes, for an example. Why would Playtime Co need to transport such huge quantities of something? Considering we only see a handful of experiments that are alive, I doubt the chemical was being used for only those experiments. Likely they needed mass amounts of it to put into all the toys that they make. Why is Poppy asleep in her case when we find her? I think they found a way to turn this Poppy chemical into a gas form. Her tank is full of it, keeping her asleep and docile. Perhaps this is why we seem to wake up at the start of chapter 2. Perhaps opening the case released the gas and knocked us out. In fact, even in the cheap jump scare we got in chapter 1 and then again in chapter 2, could be a hint that this gas is loose in the factory. Perhaps we can't fully trust everything that we see. But I'm not done yet. If this theory is true, then it could absolutely explain the behavior of the living dolls we find in the factory. I've spoken a few times now about the idea that every living doll seems to go through a change in personality. Huggy seems playful at the start until later on when he turns aggressive. Mommy seems to have two different personalities, one more aggressive, and Poppy even seems to have a massive personality shift by the end of the game. Mommy and Poppy were more interesting though, since they both seem to have changes in their eyes that mirror their personality shift. Well, now we have a perfect explanation: withdrawal. The symptoms of withdrawal from opium can include irritability, restlessness, and wait for it, widened pupils. Something we see very clearly in Mommy, but also very subtly in Poppy too. Now that she's out of her case, Poppy is slowly starting to withdraw from the Poppy chemical. It's entirely possible that Playtime Co were using it, probably in gas form, to keep these living experiments under control. It could be a way to keep them happy and docile and obedient. In fact, it's also possible that this Poppy chemical was used as some sort of pain relief for these experiments. It's likely that these experiments contain a functioning brain. After all, you need a brain to control the limbs. So it's entirely possible that these experiments can still feel pain, or at least the sensation of pain. In psychology, there is a phenomenon known as phantom limb pain, and this is where somebody loses a limb but can still feel sensation. Sometimes they can feel the limb moving, and sometimes they can even feel pain in the limb that they have lost. This is because even though the limb is lost, the brain still holds that information. It holds a map of your entire body, including all of the nerve endings. That still remains even after the limb has gone, leading to this very strange phenomenon. Well, if it's possible to feel pain in a limb that you've lost, it's entirely possible to feel pain in a body that you've lost. These experiments essentially have phantom limb body, something very creepy to think about. That pain could also explain why these experiments seem to go crazy. A combination of psychological damage from being an orphan going through these experiments, combined with pain and heavy opium use. All three things together combine to make one recipe for disaster. This could even explain why we see so many of these dolls torn up inside the factory. The experiments aren't eating them, they're cracking them open for the red Poppy chemical that they are filled with. This would explain why the dolls are discarded afterwards. The living dolls aren't hungry, they are desperate for their next hit. And with no scientists left to give it to them, the remaining dolls are forced to find other ways to get what they need. Of course, we could go as dark as we wanted with this theory. Knowing that these living dolls used to be orphans, it's entirely possible that this chemical was used on those too. Another way to make sure that they stay in line. Possibly a way to make sure that they don't escape. I suppose they were happy in their time in this evil factory. Small victories, I guess. If this theory is true, this red poppy chemical is incredibly important. And from what we've seen in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, it really does seem to fit very nicely. But that is just my theory on Poppy Playtime. Like most of my theories, it was one small idea that spiraled out of control into this mess of a theory, but I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on the video, let me know down in the comments below what you think about this theory, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.